Thank you. Welcome back. We are now at the Public Works section of the agenda. There's a number of items that were put into consent. The first item was pulled from consent, but I see that Councilor Medeiros isn't here yet. So can we move to 9.2? We'll go to 9.2.9. Report from Traffic Operations Technology of Public Works and Engineering, dated April 21st, 2017. Always Stop Review Salvation Road and Springhurst Avenue in Ward 6. Does anybody have any, does the area councilor want to, any comments? I'm happy to move the report. Okay, thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next report will be 9.2.10, report from Traffic Operations Technology, Public Works and Engineering, dated April 27th, 2017. Special road closure for Classic Cars Celebration 2017. Do any of the area councillors in wards 1 or 3 have any concerns? Move it. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next report is, as I got my sheet here figured out, it's 9.2.11. It's Traffic Operations, Public Works, Engineering on the new 2017 new school infrastructure improvements. This is a recommendation. Does anybody have any comments for staff on this? Councillor Fortini, are you good with it since you sit on the council? Would you like to move the recommendations? Thank you very much. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 9.2.12 is a report from Traffic Operations again, Public Works and Engineering, General Traffic Bylaw 93-93 Administrative Update. These are recommendations as well. Is there any comments or questions? Councillor Bowman, would you like to move the report? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. 9.2.13 is a report from Jay Preet, Streetlight Technologist, Public Works and Engineering on dated April 21st, 2017. Request to begin procurement. Purchasing bylaw section 4.0 on high pressure sodium to light emitting diodes, which are LEDs, street light conversion project throughout the city of Brampton. This is a recommendation. Is there any comments or? Oh, sorry, Councillor Fortini.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. I just want to ask a question on the lights there. Are we going to look at the streets which are more older, like the 70s, or just these are for main roads?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Fortini, we're going to be, in the fullness of time, and depending on budget appropriations in future years, we're going to be doing every street light within the city of Brampton. And I believe that the first ones we're going to be tackling are on the major roads. Yes, start with arterial. So we're going to start with the arterial roads and then work our way into the others. And depending on budget allocations in subsequent years, that'll dictate how quickly we're going to get the entire city converted.
So, thank you. One more question. When they pull out these lights, do they have to redo the wiring, or they just put them in the same pole, or the same hole, and use the same wiring underground?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in most instances it is the same pole, the same wiring. It's just strictly replacement of the unit, the head. But in some cases where the whole thing's fallen apart, we replace obviously the whole thing and the wiring. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Fortini brings up a good point. I just noticed the other day that there was some areas I was driving through in Brampton, wasn't in my ward, but there are some in my ward where they still had those old, I call them the spaceship lights, from the old 50s and 60s. When we look at those, will we be prioritizing our budgets by the age of the infrastructure, by the age of those lights?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to get Shane Behrens to comment in more depth. However, just in general, those saucer-shaped decorative lights, they're no longer manufactured. They're in very poor condition. And as part of our capital program, we've been replacing them in the last few years already. So, but I'm going to let Shane maybe give you a little more detail on that.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the plan is the saucer-shaped lights, the poles need to be changed along with the lights. So we have to, they won't be part of the scope of this LED project. They will be done through regular capital work because we have to rebuild everything. There is no LED replacement for those, so they will be captured in separate capital programs to clean those up and get them out of the system.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Fortini, you're back on the board.
Frank Gibson, Councilor Gibson says, the plastic around fades away just like a light in front of your car. Does the LD going to affect that part, the new lights, you think?
Yes, through you. The LED lights generally don't have a lens on them, so there should be no problem with the degradation of the lenses because there will be no lenses in the new lights.
Great.
Thank you very much. Could I ask the chair be heard, please? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I read through the report, and thank you, Jody, your staff. This is a good report, and it's a good example of working with our partners at AMO to come up with some good solutions in the City of Brampton, so thanks again. Okay, now we'll move back to, oh, sorry, can we get a motion to Councilor Fortini? All those in favor? All those in favor, down the end down there, thank you, gets carried. I'm just moving it. 9.2.8, Councilor Medeiros, you pulled this report.
Thank you, Chair. I guess the question I would have, so thank you for the report, good report. I'm just wondering if we referred it to budget, because I need an understanding when we're doing a formula, when we're putting in parks, we don't currently include shade shelters as part of, I guess, the funding formula or the envelope which is required to build the park. There's a huge discrepancy across the city regarding shade shelters. And, Councilor Bowman and myself, we get constantly requested for shade shelters, and they always look at out east as, having abundance. And we understand the reasons why, and some I don't. But I'm just wondering, is it possible, well, I'd like to refer this to Budget Committee, and at the time, if we can include this report and have the costs be part of the formula when we're developing new parks, so shade shelters become a part of, I guess, our standard feature, since it's been a requirement across the city.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So if you notice in the report, the ratio of shade shelters that can be supported by DCs has been increasing. And so when we collect DCs, the DCs are based on the current level of service that the municipality has. So as we got more of them, with time, the amount of DCs that we can use towards putting a shelter into a new park has increased. And in fact, so between 2003 and 2013, there was like one shelter in every 5 neighborhood parks could be constructed using DC dollars. We're now up to one in every two parks, so it's more than doubled. And post 2018, we're expecting one shelter every 1.6 parks in general. So again, and that's using DC dollars to construct. Anything above and beyond that would have to be tax dollars.
Well, and through the chair, this is my concern, especially when we talk about the mature neighborhoods and the older areas, which we don't benefit from, the DC investments, obviously. So how can we, and this is why I think it would be referred to budget for us to have a discussion to ensure that the mature areas as well, get an opportunity to provide the same level of service and have that consistency across the city. And if it needs a budget amendment and so on, that's fine, but I would just like to refer it for budget consideration. Is it a motion that's required? Okay. So I'd like to refer a motion for the report to go to budget.
Are the other speakers first?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Councilor Fortini.
Thank you. So did we plan where the new areas are going to be built, part of with the parks, when they have to leave a parkland, that these shade structures already through the developer on the new parks?
Through you, Mr. Chair. If you'll recall, we actually submitted a report because we really tried to clamp down on the criteria of what these shade shelters and where they're to go. And they really are a shade shelter. I mean, they're in lieu of a tree. So usually it's in places that don't have trees or mature trees, so it's usually in newer neighborhoods. Having said that, we also looked at a criteria for the size of park, where it is, what's the point of the park, and so those criteria then dictate whether the shade shelter is eligible. Those that are eligible, we've been working with developers ever since that criteria was passed to have a shade shelter installed as part of the development.
Thank you.
Councilor Dillon.
Thank you. I support the referral motion. I think it's an important discussion to have during budget time because of the, just because of the sheer number of requests that we do have. So I know Rob is here as well. They've done an excellent job this summer in handling all the park issues. I think we've had a good, fun topic. Pardon? Shade shelters. Yeah, shade shelters. I'm getting to it. And so, thanks for losing my train of thought, Peter. So as I get to the point, so there's 46 parks that require, not require, that are eligible. There's a possibility to have shade shelters there. And there's a criteria, I guess, that we look for the park itself. I believe it has to be over 2 acres or something along those lines. What is the actual criteria for, so say it meets the actual physical criteria, the park is big enough, et cetera, and all that. What is the actual criteria you would look at in terms of putting a shade shelter at the park? So it's big enough, but what's the criteria in terms of the amount of, the number of requests or the actual, how much pressure is coming from the public? So I want to know a little bit more about that. Like, how do you come to that conclusion that we should build a shade shelter here?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, again, this is council-approved criteria, and it's actually pretty simple. There has to be a demonstrable demand, so somebody has to make a demand that there is one there. That the implementation shows that there's no community objection. So then we do a survey of people who live around that park. So there has to be demand, a survey, and then, of course, the money. So those are the 3 things that we look for to put one in.
So one of the issues that I've had up to this point is that when you say there has to be a demand, there's no real set definition. And I'll give you an example. This is in trying to just contrast to another issue that's in Parks Lot, the portalets. If there's a survey sent out, number one, there's really no criteria as to how often we can send it. It's almost a staff sets its own criteria, and sometimes as councilors we get confused. So there's an issue where there's a shade shelter, a portalet, there's a survey that went out, passed by a lot. So it went over the 50% mark in terms of the people who were in favor of it. But there was 2 people who were against it, and even though there was a majority in favor of it, the 2 people were able to not allow that portalet to be placed in the park. Those same residents right now are wondering why they don't have the portalet there. So I'm just wondering, what's the actual criteria for the shade shelter? Like when you say demand, is it 100 people? Is it 50 people? Like, is it the councilors letting you know? Like, these things kind of need to be a little bit more defined, just for councilors and for the residents as well. Because a perfect example is the people who requested the portalet. They followed the rules, they made their request, but in the end they were denied.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, there's demand and there's demand. First of all, to bring it to our attention, through the councilor's office, that's demand. That initiates demand. But then we do a survey, and I'm gonna let Steve Vodrug talk to the details of that survey and what constitutes the second part of demand. But I don't think you can equate a shade shelter with a porta potty. I mean, once you have one objection to one of those, that's why it's, as soon as there's one, we deem them to be not admissible into a park. Whereas the shade shelter is a little different.
Could you repeat that?
So if there's any objection to a porta potty within the survey area, we don't install the porta potty.
So the criteria has to be 100%.
Pretty much. Whereas with the shade shelter, and I'm not sure what the criteria is, so I'm going to let Steve talk to that.
So is there, just to speak on that, is there actual, is it written? Because a lot of the times people who want information from me as to why I got rejected, they want it in writing. Or is this just a general rule that staff has?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it's a standard operating procedure that we have in our office, and we can certainly share it with you.
Right. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Through the chair, as far as the tipping point on shade shelters, it's a bit more prescriptive. I don't have the exact numbers, but we are looking for a reasonable response to our survey. And then with, a reasonable level of support. It's not to the same degree of scrutiny as the portlets are currently being administered to. I can provide you with the exact numbers, but I don't have them at hand right now.
Yeah, so I support the referral motion, but I think in Ward 910 we get the most, and I think you could agree to that, the most requests. It's just phenomenal how many we get on a summerly basis, and I think in one of the things I tried to work with staff was this year to let us be, give the criteria beforehand, whether it's for a portalet or whether it's a shade shelter, providing those costs beforehand, so we don't have to waste staff time in having them go through a survey, etc. So, for example, we let some of the park residents, park users know that these are the costs of a shade shelter, and we quickly let them know that, and then from that point forward, they didn't ask. But at the same time, I think there needs to be something written and defined rules and parameters around whether it's shade shelters, portalets, or some of the other common requests we get from parks. Because a lot of the time I'm stuck. I can speak for myself. I'm stuck in the middle. I really don't know which way to go because they're asking for another survey, and staff saying we can only do one every 5 years, and I'm asking staff, okay, where's it written? And then they'll tell me it's just a rule that we have within our own department.
Through you, Mr. Chair, some of this information is already on our corporate website, but maybe we can just go offline after this meeting and we can get into more detail. But I just wanted to point out that really, in wards 9 and 10, for example, there are 44 shade shelters, whereas all the other wards 1 and 5, 2, 6, 3, 4, 7, 8 are like basically
37.
half of that. So the requests are coming in, and we are building them and putting them in where required. And so I think we're concentrating in the right areas. And we're pretty sure that in the fullness of time, wards 2 and 6 are going to go up as well. As that area develops, we're going to get more shade shelters in that area as those parks develop.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is not because I'm saying we need more in Ward 9 and 10, but what I want to do is be prepared to let people know with unreasonable expectations. Sunny Meadow Park, it's a really small park. It's not even 1 acre. And so we got to let them know beforehand. We kind of stop the buck right there beforehand, say, listen, it's not feasible. But if we had the rules and the regulations and parameters right there ready to go, it'd make it much easier for us rather than having the back and forth and being a middleman between staff and wasting your time. That's what we talked about earlier on in the year, and I guess back in September. But we'll talk offline a little.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I hear what you're saying. I know some of the information is there. We'll review it with staff to make sure that the information is complete, and then we'll check back with your office.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Councilor Pleshy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm kind of hearing some numbers thrown in the background that 9 and 10 actually have 56? 44? 54?
Through you, Mr. Chair,
How current are those numbers, Joe?
I believe this is up to and including last year, and there are 44 in wards 9 and 10.
Okay, so maybe I need to better understand, like, I get requests for shade shelters as well, but not all of them are met or not all of them are sometimes explored to the extent of even the survey. Is it, I know we always say that it may be by way of demographics, but is there something that Councillor Willens and I can be doing differently to bring the shade shelters to your attention that are required in 2 and 6?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just drop us a note and it'll go on a list, and then we'll review it against the criteria. Just to let you know that in 2017, we have 2 shade shelters proposed in Ward 6, Chinguacousy Sandalwood and at Credit View Sandalwood. So there are two proposed for 2 out of the 9 that are going to be constructed this year.
And do those include the shade shelters that the developers are installing? Like Mount Pleasant Phase 2, they have a shade shelter that the developer is building. And I guess that'll lead into my next question. When I ask, if applications come forward, and I ask the development to look into a shade shelter for that development, for that application, and they say, absolutely, it would go great with, with the community, do they then come back to us to get a portion of that refunded by way of DCs, or is 100% of it off are they paying for 100% of that shade shelter?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we actually had a couple of those on the agenda earlier. They went into consent, but when we do the reckoning at the end, like report 9.2.2, 9.2.3, they weren't necessarily for a shade shelter, but there were items that were over and above what was originally planned for that park. Might have been extra benches, might have been this, that, or the other thing, might have been a shade shelter. And so then we come back to council, and through that report, we ask for a top-up for the refund money back to the developer.
Okay. I'm good, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. I've got a report. I think, Al, you gave this to me last year, and it's shade structures inventory as of at May 2016, and I've got a total of in 9 and 10 actually, 19 in Ward 9 and 32 in Ward 10 that I've got. So that's 51. So that's twice the number of shade shelters in Ward 1 and 5, and in Ward 3 and 4, and Ward 7 and 8. All those. There's twice as many. Pat's saying we should just move some of Gurpreet's over to ours. But I'm just wondering. I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure that in the criteria, and I want, I'm moving forward with this because we have a lot of requests in our wards too. But is there a space, or is there a maximum that we say, there's a big park, Gage Park. Gage Park. According to this, we've got the band shell. It's listed as a shade shelter. So if Gage Park is the size it is, and it's big enough to have 2 shade shelters, do we have rules in place that say, no, you will get 1 single shade shelter per park? Because I just want to stop the requests before they come in for additional shelters.
Through you, Mr. Chair, for a park, Gage would be an example. We do have parks where we're being asked for a second shade shelter, and at this point, based on funding availability, we're going to deal with the ones that don't have shade shelters first.
Okay. And how many shade shelters can we build in a year? Is there?
With current resources, staffing, and the budget that we've been afforded, we're this year I think we're doing 7, and that's really at our capacity to deliver realistically with all the other projects that we have with city-driven new capital and operationally.
Oh yeah, no, there's no question about that. You guys have your hands full. So I'm just wondering. I'm just trying to be realistic when we talk to our residents. and they're saying, we want a shade shelter, and when we tell them, well, it's not in the 2018, you're going to be waiting possibly till 2019, 2020, that's realistic, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and to my knowledge, with the construction of the shade shelters in 2017, I'm not sure how many outstanding requests we actually have.
Okay.
So you're inviting my request?
That's what I was just about to say. We can put in a full list. Yeah. Yeah, and that was just my question. I mean, if somebody's saying to us, we want a shade shelter, is saying to them 2019 is the next time, that's realistic.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just had a little whisper in my right ear that right now we're in the process of surveying 4. So based on our capacity to deliver, and we're delivering about 7 to 8 a year, so there's probably room for 4 more for 2018, and then 8 for 2019 and so on.
Okay. So we'll get our 4 in first. We'll move a motion. Ward 3 and 4 gets the next 4. So thank you very much, Joe. Thanks.
Councilor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I was young, we had shade shelters and we called them trees. And they didn't cost $100,000 to build. They didn't mention one of the criteria, I think, Joe, is size of the park too, isn't it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, size does matter. And also the shade shelters come in a variety of sizes. So a smaller park may qualify for a smaller shade shelter. But there are some parkettes that are so small that not even the smallest one qualifies.
Yeah. Because I just had one turned down because of the size. Not turned down to me, it just a constituent asked for it and I put the request in. And I totally agree with staff on that. You know, we have to use some common sense here. And I believe that a cost analysis has to come into play in these shelters. For instance, if there's 10 people that want a shade shelter, does that merit spending $100,000 on a shade shelter? To me, it doesn't. But there are some parks where there's, we have them, where there's seniors groups that have 50, 60 people at one time using these parks, and that to me merits. But I want to publicly say that I do not support porta toilets in our parks at all. If we have a park that's big enough that needs toilets, we should do a proper job and put in toilets. But if I lived backing onto a park or beside a park, I would not sign a survey that requested a porta toilet, and I would say absolutely not. I think it's a half measure. It's not something that I want to see. You can't contain the smell of them. I certainly wouldn't want it behind my house. And I've told staff this before, I do not want them in my wards. I will not support any resident asking me for porta toilets in wards 1 and 5. I just won't. The shade shelters are a different thing. The shade shelters are something that we're moving towards, and that's a good thing.
Can we get back to shade shelters?
Thank you.
Councilor Spilberry, shade shelters.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to just say that most of the people who are in wards 9 and 10 anyway that ask for the shade structures are people, first of all, the parks that don't have them. There are 2 out of the 3 parks do get them as part of the development process. And then you have the 1 park out of the 3 that don't get them, and the people have been obviously saying, why not us? We pay the same taxes, we pay the same, so why haven't we got one? And that's where, and the justification of providing these is because, first of all, the trees take forever to grow, to provide any shade. That is, and the people in my ward, in wards 9, our ward 9 and 10, they use the parks very actively, continually in the summer. The park is a destination that for the neighborhood. And you go there in any evening where the weather's nice, and you'll see loads of people with their kids playing around, and the parents and the grandparents, and so I believe that, especially now with global warming, the sun, the ozone depletion and all this stuff, it's how you keep out of the sun. So if the trees were of good size, people are happy with the trees to stay under the tree for shade. It's probably even nice if we could get a bit of a breeze under the tree. But certainly, there's a demand from the community. I'm sure that if you go to a park that doesn't have one and you want a petition, you get hundreds of names on from the area I represent anyway that they're needed, and I think it's just part of the of a park development these days. That when you don't have trees that provide shade, people like to have, you have the mothers sitting out there in the sun with the kids playing around, and it's not fun sitting out in the hot sun, just sitting there and absorbing the rays, and which are not healthy for you anyway. Most of the time, we get too much. So I believe, I believe that it's a good investment for the community, and I believe that they should be provided in all the new parks as part of the development process. I don't know how we can tell the developers that you're just going to have to build one in every park, and I don't believe that. I don't know if the developers will fight back, but maybe we should try it. To say from here on, every park gets a shelter, and then we can focus on the parks that don't have shelters, or in the other wards, especially because people are looking for them. There's a change of change of culture, and a lot of people want to see them in the park. So the money we're spending from the tax base should go to provide them in existing parks. And from here on, no new development. We require a shade structure in every park, period. And let the developers worry about how they're going to pay for it. And I think staff should take that approach and just tell them, hey, we want a shade structure in every park from here on, and never mind about this 2 out of 3. So let's not create another backlog by keep building new parks and not having one, and catch up on the existing parks. So I don't know whether staff can take that into advisement to basically say we want a shade structure in every park from here on, and let the developers come in over and otherwise we won't approve your plan of subdivision. I don't think they're going to go to the OMB over a $50,000 park or a shed structure they can put up, where the city probably has to spend $60,000 or $70,000. The developers can do for a lot better. So can we try that approach and just say, if you don't agree with our new approach, then go to council, go to the OMB. Let them come here, or let them go to the OMB.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I don't have exact numbers, but and I'm gonna have to look at this and report back to you, Councillor. But with the ratio of 1.6 to 1, we just about get every park with a shade shelter that has the criteria for a shade shelter paid for by the developer. But I'm going to have to confirm that.
Well, in the
So in
report,
other words, if it's a certain size, parkette that has the criteria for a shade shelter, the current ratio of 1 to 1.6 pretty much covers all the ones that are an adequate size. They actually do get a shade shelter. But I'll have to check and verify that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Palashi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the referral, just a question to staff. Any implications on referring this? I know that you guys have put a ton of work into this. It's dating back to, the fall of 2015. So any issues with referring this to budget?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are no issues with it being referred back to budget. In fact, we'd be happy to, and in fact, you as council members can give us your list so that we can at least have a list to talk about what come budget time. Because right now, like I said, we've only got 4 on the list, so give us the list and then we can come back and deal with it at budget time.
Okay, I'm writing it out right now. And I'm happy to support that, the referral, but I'm going to ask that a kind of a wrench be thrown into this. And the fact that, we've talked, Councillor Gibson touched on it a little bit, and the fact that, we've gotten away from our natural source of shade. And the fact that, the city of Brampton was hit hardest out of any municipality with regards to the ice storm. And in that municipality, as far as we know and what we've been told, Heart Lake was hit the worst out of Brampton. But, that being said, I didn't make that up. I'm not Hazel McCallion. I didn't make that up.
Get back to your point there.
Thank you. I would really like you to come back with something like, the possibility of adding mature trees instead of shade shelters. The cost of, I know mature trees they're expensive, they're not cheap, but I would like an opportunity to at least look at that. And there's a new application that's coming forward that Councillor Willens and I have met with the developer on. It's coming forward to the city of Brampton, and we both asked for not only the mature trees that are currently there to remain there, but in their new green space that they're adding, we're asking for mature trees to be put there as well. So, I think that's something that we should be looking into going forward. Like, shade shelters are, not only are they, a maintenance issue over time, but you're getting away from, nature's shade, and I'm sure there's something that we can do in partnership with either the Credit Valley Conservation or the Toronto Region Conservation to get some mature trees in these parks and instead of shade shelters. It's something that I would like to see and something that I would support. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any comment from staff?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it sounds like a reasonable approach, and but I'll discuss it. We'll discuss it with staff and come back. Just off the bat, I mean, not all areas are accessible by equipment, and when you start talking about larger trees, that could be an issue. Whereas, when you bring in 2x4s and 2x6s, it's a lot easier than bringing in a tree spade with a large tree. But I mean, other than that, it sounds like a valid alternative.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do the referral.
You can do the referral.
Ward 2 and 6.
No, he's just.
Oh, I don't want shade structure.
Yeah. All right, I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it.
Hey.
So, speaking to the referral regarding shade structures, I can understand where Councillor Pleshy is coming from, but at the same time, we also have to remember the residents are demanding shade structures. They're not demanding trees. I'm sure they want trees, but there's a reason why. Just quick. There's a reason why they want shade structures. There's a demand for it. So the question I have is, why ignore it if our residents are asking for it? There's social factors involved as well. It's the evolution of Brampton going on right now. We have a growing seniors population. We have a changing demographic, and we have to adapt to serve the needs of our residents. We can't just say, listen, you have a whole list of reasons why you need a shade shelter, but we think trees are better. We got to listen to them, and I think where trees are appropriate, we should add trees, and where there's a real need for a shade shelter, we'll put a shade shelter. And I remember we had discussions, and it's not as easy as just saying we need a shade shelter. We also have to look, for example, the social factors as well. I worked with the Toronto Police for a number of years, and there's an issue of elder abuse in the community. And it's not necessarily physical abuse per se, but a lot of these seniors, this is literally the only place they have to go. And socializing with other people of their age and of common interests is what keeps them from going insane. It keeps them sane. A lot of them are here in the country because they're forced to, they're forced to pick up the kids at a certain time, forced to drop the kids off at a certain time. The park is the one refuge that they have, and they're there for about 2-3 hours a day, sometimes even longer. And what they want is some place that can protect them from the sun and the rain and other elements as well. And a lot of these cases, I speak to them all the time. They're here for a while, but their pensions are being taken away by their kids. And I'll let them know, listen, you know what, either we build a $100 million facility for seniors just to cater to you, or we can get you a few extra benches or a few extra picnic tables, or we could look into getting a shade shelter. And when they say we need 2 shade shelters, that's where I come and say, listen, it's probably not possible, but we'll work on one, and we'll work on making it a little bit easier for you. So, that's just a little bit of a background as to why there's so much demand for it. Back in some of their old countries, their home countries, they get together, 40, 50, 60, even 100 of them. And that's a place where they can come and, play cards or talk to each other and get away from the daily grind of their lives. And so, again, we have to adapt to it. We can either ignore it, we can address it, or we can work with them to try to figure out what's reasonable. And some of the requests I know are unreasonable, but going back to my original point, if we can have some type of criteria we can show them, their understanding. We had the Municipal 101, you were out at it last year. A lot of them said we want shade shelters. As soon as we showed them a list of the pricing, they were like, you know what, that might be a little bit too much for the taxpayer. So social and education component of it as well. When we really tighten up and show them these are the rules, but at the same time we're flexible enough to show that where we can adapt a little bit to cater to their needs. So just for the information of some of the fellow councillors here, that there's some, again, to use the word social factors involved as well for the demands.
Thank you, Councillor John. Seeing no other speakers, it looks like councillors have a lot of work to do to get the list to Joe and.
Don't look at your
Okay, so we have a motion by Councillor Medeiros to refer item 9.2.8 be referred to Budget Committee for further consideration as part of the 2018 budget deliberations. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, under other new business, we have there's no other new business, but the minutes of the Brampton School Traffic Safety Council are there. Councillor Bertini, do you have any comments to make since you're the chair? No? All those in favor of? Thank you, that's carried. No correspondence. Is there questions from any of the councillors in regards to Public Works meeting? Oh, there is some councillors' question periods. Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the chair. So yesterday, Joe, sorry, my apologies. Yesterday we had a town hall, Councillor Bowen and myself, and staff did a great job. Jane was just fantastic, and I can't, just across the board, all staff who presented that day were fantastic. Unfortunately, and this is one of those disconnects that sometimes happens, where some businesses come out and they talked about the lack of communication. And I know that we've bent over, backwards trying to communicate with them, but there is this considerable disconnect. Councillor Bowman and myself received a petition of 70 businesses in the downtown area who say that they haven't been consulted. So I guess my question is, can we ensure, and this is one of those challenges, I know you guys are not the communication experts, but can we ensure that communication that is an integral part of this project? And I'm sure it is, I'm sure there's a team member or not, but the communication, I don't know what else, I'm not the expert, but can you ensure that that project, that we, I would say, provide as much communication support as we can?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It's that old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but sometimes you can't make that horse drink. I mean, our strategic communications people, our engineering folks, our economic development people have all had a collaborative method. We've looked at different ways of getting the message out. We've had public information centers. We've had individual meetings with the BIA board and with small business owners throughout the process. I I get that, but I guess as soon as you get a little bit closer to actually doing something, that's when people really wake up to the fact that something really is happening. I get that too, and, yeah, and in this particular case, for this particular project, we're, again, between economic development, ourselves, and the Region Appeal, we've actually set up an ambassador program so that we go to each and every business, so that we understand what their business hours are, when do they get deliveries, when do their customers come in, so we have an appreciation of what goes on with each and every business, and so that we can actually, if possible, tailor the construction methods that we use on the street to minimize impact during construction. And at the end of the day, that everything functions so that their business is viable once we're finished. So that's the game plan, and I'm really sorry to hear that there were that many people that really genuinely didn't know about it.
Yeah, and through the chair, everything that you said, I've witnessed it. I've seen the ambassadors. I've seen, staff come to the BIA. I've witnessed it. But when you get irate shop owners who generally are afraid of their livelihood being affected in that capacity, regarding parking, regarding other issues, it's just, I'm not sure if we do another kick at the can. We'll pass on, I think you have a copy of the petition, and we just do a specific outreach to those folks and try to work, because I hear from the BIA members as well that sometimes they're in the loop or they're not in the loop. Let's really make a concerted effort and maybe have one of them join some form of committee that we have, so there isn't this. I'm not sure, I'll leave it up to you guys, but I just want to, and I do appreciate how difficult it is, and I do appreciate the great work staff have done, but there just seems to be, it's becoming a little volatile, and if you see people start screaming at meetings and something, then there's some issues there.
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, I certainly hear that, and our staff hears that. And so we completed phase one, which is the AA document. It's filed, or it will be filed after, well, it is filed now. And when we get into the detailed design, we are going to be going back again and again and again until we get the design completed. So there will be discussion, and I'll certainly bring back your sentiments and observations to our team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Medeiros, and I'm assuming you're talking about the downtown streetscaping.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Councilor Fortini.
Thank you, through the chair. Joe, just a quick question. Do we have anything on those wood fences that we have all different colors in certain areas? I'm getting a lot of calls. One's blue, one's brown, and then they have, some of them have 2x4s holding them up along Howden, and there's nothing we could do on that, on colors and the way they're standing?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So what may look like a fence could be a noise wall. If it's a noise wall, we're actually doing a study to assess all of the noise walls within the city of Brampton, and we're doing a condition rating on them. And we're going to be coming, that's part of our asset management plan, is then to come back to council and start retrofitting these things, probably on a first case basis, because some of them can be dangerous. When it comes to fencing, if it's strictly a fence and not a noise wall, and believe me, they can look almost the same. You could have a wooden noise wall or a wooden noise fence. But if it was intended to be just a fence, then that's a property standards issue.
Well, these are fences, I know the difference. They're not like in and out or special. Now, if someone wants a concrete wall, do they need a percentage of the residents? Like, say, Bramley Road wants a noise wall, so many homes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, there is, if there's a petition that people want to put in a concrete noise wall, there's a difference whether it's a replacement wall, whether it's a new wall.
Yeah.
If it's a new wall, then we have to test the criteria whether it actually needs a wall. Because if it needs a wall, in other words, the decibel level is beyond a certain threshold, then they qualify for a certain program, and we can do it as a local improvement, basically a local improvement on the street. So, and I'll defer to the clerk, but it's something like more than 50% of the people that represent 66% of the assessed value of the homes. It's something like that. And if you get that, then everybody gets a noise wall, and whether they voted for it or not, and up it goes. But only if the criteria for the decibel level is met.
Okay, so they have to meet that certain height of standard for the noise, like on, say, Bramley Road. So if it doesn't meet that, it doesn't fall under the rule, like they pay 15, the state pays 50, or the region used to take 25%?
Through you,
We-
Mr.
they
Chair,
won't
that's
get it.
correct. It doesn't qualify because it's not a noise wall then.
Right. But we have a bylaw, don't we? If you're facing a main road, you're allowed to build a fence up to 8 feet. And the rest is 6.6 feet. So,
Through you, Mr. Chair, you can build a fence to, yeah, and there are restrictions as to the height of the fence, but that's up to the individual homeowner to do, not really the city.
yeah. Okay, so then I just have to get the residents together, or we have a certain form that we fill out, send them out to them?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if there's a group of people, if they can either contact us directly or do it through your office, and we'll assist you in getting the program off the ground.
Okay. And last question, one more thing, just a thought on those shade shelters. It's not only about the shade, because I've been walking a lot of parks at night. They have a light there and they sit around on a hot night like last night, and it also covers them from the rain. You build a shade shelter, it stays there for years. A tree, you might get another ice storm, or it dies. We waste all that money, and then we're back where we started again. So I think the shade shelter's ready to go. So maybe we could take some from your area. Bring them over.
Councilor Palacio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the decibel level, Joe, is that measured in front of the house, inside the house, or in the backyard?
It's measured in the backyard.
What if the noise is coming from front of the house?
If it's at the front of the house is considered to be the noise attenuation feature.
So it'll be measured in front?
It's really, no, it's measured at the back. It's at your backyard amenity area. So it's behind that sliding glass door, 5 feet above the ground, and that's where the microphone is placed. And I believe it's 65 decibel LEQ, and LEQ basically means over a 24-hour period. So if you run the lawnmower for half an hour right beside the little device when they're measuring things, over 24 hours, you'd have to run that lawnmower for a long time, so.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much. There are no other questions on the board, so that completes the Public Works section. And we now move on to the Community Services, and I believe that's Councilor Palacio. You have the chair, sir.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the Community Services portion of the agenda. We'll move right into item 6.2.2, 2017 funding request, volunteer Mississauga, Brampton, Caledon. There is a recommendation. Any councillors have any questions? Seeing none, Councillor Gibson, all in favor? That carries. The next one is the number of non-residents players on various teams of the Brampton Canadettes. There's a report from Mr. Boyce, Director of Recreation Community Services, item 6.2.3. Are there any questions? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, Derek, the information that you've provided, I read through that, had to read through it a couple of times to add this, subtract that, multiply by this to get the final numbers. Are we going to be doing that through the sports alignment with any other teams, or specifically just because we were asked about the girls' hockey?
So we were asked specifically about the girls' sports hockey, which is a little bit different because they don't have the
the numbers of the majority that some of the other sports have, but through our review of our affiliation policy, which is something that's on our list to review, we'll be taking a look at it comprehensively to ensure that we can have some consistency. But for emerging sports or sports where you don't have a broad base, as like what soccer would have, or what or boys soccer, this is why we specifically responded to the questions about the women's hockey.
Okay, and did you get back to the individual who originally asked the question, or are you just providing us with a report?
We're just providing the report. We're giving you the report, but we will endeavor to contact the individual after the report has gone through the council.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
We did, to Councillor Bowman, we did let them know that the report was on the agenda today. Councillor Willens.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just quickly, when you looked at the girls' hockey, did you take, I guess you said you only looked at the girls' hockey?
For this report, yes.
Was there other affiliation policies that you looked at to see if there were similarities or differences? Because I know with the lacrosse, there was a 3-import rule per team, per rep team.
Yeah.
And they didn't go above that. I noticed it, and so what it did was it prevented a whole team from becoming out-of-towners. I know I get the percentage part of it, I appreciate that, but what we did in lacrosse was a maximum. It was a percentage, but also a maximum per team.
Right.
That way, you didn't get all the kids coming from one team. Because what quite happens when this is coaches follow up, come up from Mississauga, and they bring their kids with them. So, I just use Mississauga. It doesn't mean they're coming from Mississauga, but that quite happens when you don't have a tighter thing. But thanks for the time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Willens. You'll move Councillor Moore.
Thank you. When you start putting together reports on affiliate and percentages and all that, I kind of glaze over a bit. But no, because you guys speak that language. But this is the result of a delegation. The parent of somebody on one of the teams who clearly believes that there is a problem. And this report says, it's slightly over, but it's generally adhering to it. There's the perception and the reality piece of this, and what concerns me is that now, in a very public way, there was a delegation that was criticizing the organization that, that he was supporting his children to be part of. But I do think that this, we need to keep an eye on this. Of the 139, I don't know how we validate the rest of them on the team, or the rest of them in the league, validate their residency. I don't know what process you used or what is used. I mean, if you're taking it at face value that they're declaring 139 girls are not living in the or are non-residents, how did you validate the other 600 plus? So I don't know whether they have an answer to that, but my concern is that there's a perception, and I don't think that the gentleman came alone. I think there's probably other voices behind him. He was the one that chose to come to council that day, and I think that the league and others need to know that the municipality will be watching these, that we will be looking for validation, because it's never a good day when a parent feels that that their only course of action is to come before council. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Willens, you moved that report.
Sure.
All in favor? That carries. Next item is 6.3.1, minutes, Brampton Sports Hall of Fame Committee. Any questions on this? Seeing none. Councillor Moore, you'll move the minutes from the Sports Hall of Fame. All in favor? Carried. There are no correspondence. Councillor question period. Any members of council have any questions? Seeing none. Referred matters list. Do we need to move the referred matters list? Councillor Bowman, you'll receive the referred matters list that was posted online. All in favor? That carries. Government relations. We have no government relations here at the City of Brampton. Did any members of council have any questions on the government relations? Councillor Willens, you'll move that. All in favor? All in favor? That carries. Public question period. We have 15 minutes to sit here and wait for a member of the public to answer any questions, ask any questions. Seeing no member of the public that wishes to ask any questions, we are now going into closed session. We will be having closed session on the 6th floor and I'll state all the items, to discuss 13.1, a proposed or pending acquisition and disposition of land by the municipality or local board property disposition matter. Item 13.2, proposed or pending acquisition, disposition of land and municipality local board. Item 13.3, the same thing. Item 13.3, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board property acquisition matter. Do you wish to?
On 13.4.
On 13.4, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, land exchange matter with the region appeal.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to members of committee, that report was originally tracking to go with a companion report on the surplus declaration. This relates to Peel Manor's redevelopment. This report, with the indulgence of the committee, should be referred to council next week when the surplus declaration report will be coming forward to council next week, so they're both considered at the same time. Council cannot make a decision on the land exchange until they've declared the land surplus first. So
are you asking us just to refer it and not talk about it in camera?
Right.
Okay.
It'll be addressed next week at council.
Councillor Bowman has decided to remove that referral. All in favor? That carries. Item 13.5, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, 2017 Brampton Arts Walk of Fame inductees. Item 13.6, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, property disposition, and insurance matter. Oh, then why didn't you stop me before? Item 13.7, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, been referred. Item 13.8, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, solicitor advice. I am not recognizing him on purpose, Councillor Dillon. Thank you. Councillor Willens. That's what I just said, if you're listening. Thank you for paying attention. We're going to meet in the 6th floor in 10 minutes.